Going Ike, brought to you by Abu Garcia. Now it's time for the real dirt.
30 years doing this. This is in my top 5 of worst experiences I've ever had. So I would put it at 3 or 4. I didn't want to give you the other ones. I'm going to put number 1 at the 2002 Bassmaster Classic in Chicago, Illinois. It was a tournament where we were going out of a harbor there, downtown Chicago. You could fish the entire lake, Lake Michigan, or a couple different rivers that would run up there. The Calumet River and a couple other ones. So I legitimately found the winning smallmouth. I found smallmouths that were averaging 3 to 3 3/4 pounds. The winning smallmouths on a few shoals way, way out in the main lake. And the first day that they launched us, different era. You know, we sound like a broken record, but we constantly talk about in 2002, it was a different time. And they let us go in anything. And I remember they launched us that morning and the wind, it was straight north at like 20, dude. Biggest waves I've ever seen in my life. Occasional, you know, there's always the rogues. I think I saw one that was like 14-foot wave, like just cresting, just giant freaking rollers. And dude, I still tried to go to those fish. I tried, and it was so bad. And after about the 3rd or 4th time, I completely filled the boat with water. I gave up and ended up going into the Calumet River. And, you know, that was the worst water I've ever been in my life. The biggest, scariest water. Like, yeah, it's so bad, the cops are coming. So my 2002 top 3 open performance after 3 opens got me to the classic that I won. Not the tour. This is the irony of this. So it was the second term of the year. I had a first good one. Second term of the year was on Thousand Islands. I decided to go to Henderson Harbor. I found this mega school in Henderson Harbor. And I remember going out of Clayton and very reminiscent of that Lake Michigan tournament, coming out as I got, and I was like a later flight that day. It was probably flight 3. And as I'm getting closer to the mouth, dude, they're getting bigger. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not a joke. Like, I remember thinking, and my partner was with me, I'm like, damn, like, there must be some of those big ships in front of us. You know, there must be like giant freight liners in front of us putting this wake off. Nope. It was already, even like 5 miles before I got to the lake, it was already the residuals from the waves. Dude, so as I'm getting closer, I'm seeing something real strange, dude. As I'm getting closer, now it's big, giant, slow rollers. And I'm seeing boats, bass boats, go the other way. I'm like, it's weird. Another one, like 4 or 5, now it's like 5, 6. Look at my partner, I'm like, there's another tournament going on today? Out of like Cape Vincent? Is there a tournament that they're running up the river? No, dude. They were the other guys coming back. And I remember seeing, of all people, Woo Dave's. And dude, I see him. He's like the 8th boat I see coming back. And he's going, go back. And dude, I had nothing else. I had these fish in Henderson. I wanted to make the classic through the open so bad. So I just made the decision to go. A lot of them were cresting. So, you know, you have the slow rollers, but then you have waves that actually crest. And dude, it was so bad. And until I could make that hard left and get in the troughs, there was 10 miles of ass kicking like I've never had. And I remember the scariest thing I ever saw. You heard me talk about rogues, but I'm trying to get a rhythm, and all of a sudden at the corner of my eye, a giant one crept up on me, and I misjudged the timing of it, and it was a couple foot bigger than all of them, and it crested on us, and it hit us so hard. I had a helmet on. It knocked the helmet off of my head, came off of my head. And it was like, if you ever get punched in the face, it's like you see a flash of white. I saw the white. I came to, and my helmet's floating. The water is completely level with the front and back deck, and the helmet's floating. And I'm like, and I look up at the front, and the trolling motor is completely gone. Graph was built into the front deck, so that was still there. But the trolling motor, not the bracket, but the motor and the pedal were gone. Back then, I would carry a spare motor in my rod locker. It took a while. I had to get that trolling motor in. I didn't even screw the foot pedal down. Just laid the foot pedal down. I plugged it in. It took me a while. Legitimately caught 16 3/4 pounds in like 20 minutes. And then turned around and had to go through almost 3 hours back through that stuff to weigh in. I ended up with a top 5 in that tournament. And because of that, I made the Bassmaster Classic in 2003, and it's the classic that I won. The Sabine River one, and everyone knows that one, is, you know, Sabine River, running up a little oxbow and hit a submerged log. The log was actually totally across this bayou, and it's a bayou that I had practiced in. So somehow it got dislodged and then reattached, and I hit it probably going 40 or 50, but it was on a turn. It was on a bend, and at the last second I saw it. So I was going around this bend, and I could see a calm spot. You know, there was like a little ripple, but there was a calm spot, completely straight line. And I know from river fishing what that means, you know. And I came off the throttle, but when I came off the throttle, I hit it. And when I hit that log, it just literally pulled the wheel out of my hands, and I went up an embankment, like 60, 70 feet up an embankment. The thing I remember the most is the sound of the branches and the trees, the small trees breaking as the boat went up. Like that sound, like that. And dude, there was a pole limb like this that was sticking out. And my partner was young, and he literally jumped in my lap as we were going up, because he saw it coming. He jumped in my lap, and we came to rest. And when we came to rest, we looked, and that stick had impaled his seat. 100% impaled his seat. The other scary thing is, dude, we went up this lane that was just an open lane about the width of the boat. To my left and to my right, within 5 feet, 3 to 5 feet, on either side of this, where I went up, were cypress trees that were that round growing on this embankment. The boat just happened to go up in a lane. That really happened, dude. And number 5 I'll give you real quick is, and no one really knows about this, and this one, you're not going to find any pictures or video or anything like that, but I was pre-practicing the California Delta. Gotta be mid-2000s. And Ish Monroe is a friend of mine. He lived out there. And I asked Ish, I said, if I come out this fall, they had announced the schedule. I said, if I come out this fall, will you navigate around with me and just help me learn how to get around? I don't want any spots. Just show me how to get around the Delta. Yeah. Come out for a couple days. We'll hang out. I'm like, cool. This is awesome. So I'm in Ish's dad's boat, which was a 518 Ranger. And we're looking all around. We're having a great day. But Ish wants me to drive. And we're coming back. And I'm not full out, but I'm 50 miles an hour. And I got my vest on. He's got his vest on. And we're just heading back to the ramp. Mm-hmm. And dude, I'm riding, and I'm looking, you know, because I'm trying to make notes and look, and I'm like looking. And when I turn back ahead of me, right in front of me, to my left, just a little bit, was a full-on fucking floating tree, dude. Like, legitimate, imagine a tree on the street that has come into the water and is floating. Root ball, tree, like a tree. And when I see it, because remember, I'm looking around, and I look, and there it is, straight ahead of us to our left, but like, we're heading toward it. And my instinct, when I saw that tree, was to turn away from it. Just, it's natural human instinct. So I turned that wheel away from it, and when I did that, the boat missed it, but the foot of the outboard, because I turned it, hit that root ball of that log. And then so I'm turning this way, and when the foot hit, it jolted me this way. And when that happened, the momentum, and it's like gravity, it's a real thing, I went straight out the boat. Straight out. And pulled the kill switch, my vest inflated, but I literally just did the stop, drop, and roll, like, I don't know, 10, 12, I don't even know how many times. And dude, same thing. I remember just like getting hit with the water, and water at 50 hurts, dude. It's like it's getting punched. And I remember feeling ish, and he literally smart-ish grabs a pair of pliers, pulls the kill switch out by hand with the pliers. He's got his vest on because he got thrown into my seat. So he grabs the pliers, pulls the kill switch out, starts the outboard, comes and gets me, pulls me out. He goes, "You all right?" I'm like, I'm dazed, like, I think so. He's like, "Wiggle your fingers. Wiggle your toes." I look down, I wiggle my toes, I'm looking down, my shoes are gone. I got no shoes left. I hit the water so hard, my shoes, we never found my shoes. But again, to give you the ranking, I would put this experience, the Albemarle Sound, I would put, in my 30 years, I would put it right at number 3, dude.
And if you think that's dirty, check this out.
You talk about tournament fishing, and you see so many amazing, beautiful, strange, weird, crazy things. Yeah, you see so many things. Like, just last night here, I got to see an orange moon rising over the lake. It is beautiful. And those memories stick in your head, and you remember them for a lifetime. And that last day of practice, the same day we just talked about, when I found that rock, I continued to look down the Detroit River. My mind was very much now like current breaks. Let's look for current breaks. And I got down to this island, and I think it's called Holiday Island. I'll have to look on the map. And it was basically an island that's a park that sits in the middle of the Detroit River. So when you look at the river, Detroit River is split in the middle, shared by the U.S. and Canada. It's Canada on the left, U.S., Detroit on the right, and this island split it. And it's a big park, and the head of the islands, I know from fishing rivers, heads and tails of islands are great spots because they're current breaks. And there was this rock sort of point jetty, not jetty, but rock tip. And I'm like, God, there's a current break. And I remember grabbing a jerkbait and saying, let's fish around this. This reminds me of that spot that I found about an hour ago. And I'm jerkbaiting, clown color jerkbait. Back then was a big smallmouth lure, clown jerkbait. Husky jerk, a long A, a bomber long A. And I'm jerking this clown color jerkbait. And I see a car pull up on this point. The parking lot was right on the point. Car pulls up, I'm not thinking anything about it. I'm going around, I'm waiting to get to the back side of this, and I'm gonna pick up my tube. And I'm fishing the jerkbait. And all of a sudden I look, and you're observant, and I see 2 women get out of the passenger side and the back seat of this little silver car. And they're wearing bathrobes, white bathrobes. And I was like, that's odd. Like, it's kind of like fall, it's chilly, it's chilly September in this part of the world. It's kind of cool, That's odd. And they get out and they're just standing by the car. And a guy gets out of the driver's seat. He goes to the trunk of the car. I'm watching all this happening, and it's happening 100 yards, 50, 70 yards from me, 50 yards from me. And all of a sudden the guy pulls out his case and a camera. What the is going on here? Dude, before I know it, the ladies climb out in their bathrobes onto these rocks, and they're not like riprap. These are boulders stacked up. And they climb out in these boulders. The photographer puts his case down, gets his camera, does something, and before I know it, they're totally naked. Dude, they're totally nude, not a ounce of clothing, and dude, they're hitting all these positions. I mean, just Like, craziest stuff. And this guy's taking pictures. And I'm like, they see me. They know I'm there. They don't care. And I'm just kind of like, well, I'm not catching any jerkbait, but I might go down this bank in a couple more minutes. So it was one of those moments, like I said, when I look back on the 30 years, you know, it's a mixture of things that you would never believe. The beautiful, the amazing, the terrifying, the scary stuff. And then the stuff like that, the mind-blowing stuff that, you know, you look at it and say, what the hell is going on here? But, you know, it's part of the experience. And that was, what a great way to kick off my career, right? Seeing 2 naked chicks and having a top 20.
And if you think that's dirty, check this out.
I'm driving up to St. Clair and I'm just thinking about, man, what happened up here at St. Clair? And all of a sudden, dude, it was like sitting in front of me and I almost forgot. It was like a slap to my face. I'm like, wait a minute. Lake St. Clair is the location of my first ever tour level professional event, okay? So, you know, when we talk about my first professional event ever, I consider it, you know, Hartwell, 30 years ago. Bassmaster Invitational pro on pro style event. But when you talk about my first tour event, so that goes back to 1999, so about 25 years ago, when I qualified for the predecessor of the Bassmaster Elites, which was called the Bassmaster Top 150. It was the highest tour at that time, bigger than FLW, bigger than, you know, the US Open, the biggest tour in the world. And I qualified that through the invitationals in 1998. So I earned my tour card. But back then, along with a couple different changes, they had a co-angler back then. It was 4 days with a guaranteed 3 days of fishing. It was 150 pros, not 105, so there were some differences. And, you know, the other difference was the way that the tour schedule set up. It was started in the fall, went all the way through the winter, and ended in the late summer. So the schedule of the tour back then was significantly different. And I gotta tell you, I loved it. Like, looking back on that style of tour schedule, in my opinion, it was more diverse. It showed who was a more true versatile angler. You saw fish in the fall pattern, the winter pattern, the pre-spawn, the spawn, the post-spawn, and finally you saw them in the summer pattern. And back then, the season would go fall to late summer, and then it would end with the Classic, right? That should be the order of a sport, like the Super Bowl, like the World Series, right? You should work all year to end the year and go right to your championship event. So I'm an advocate of bringing that back. But when I look back on it, that was September, call it mid to late September of 1999, right here at Lake St. Clair, Metro Park, which was just down the road from where we're at right now, where we're filming this. And, you know, I remember the feelings of being your first event, you know, the excitement and the energy and the nervousness and the vastness. We've talked about this before at places like Okeechobee, where you look out. I'm looking right now as I'm talking to you, and I'm looking at a sea of blue water. I remember those things, my first tour event. And you know, you want to make a good showing. You're a rookie. It's your first event. You don't want to bomb, right? You want to go out and say, man, I belong here. And I remember back then the practice was a little different in that we had a longer practice period. And I remember this place, I just assumed it was deep, but it's very bowl-like, okay? And I remember having a mediocre first day, a mediocre second, a mediocre third. And I remember on the fourth day of the tournament, fishing down at the mouth of the Detroit River, okay? And remember, primary fall pattern on these Great Lakes, fish sucking to current, right? Sucking to rivers. And I remember that last day being down there and idling and looking at my graph and looking, and I can remember there being a slight chop on the water. And as I'm idling, I look and I'm like, that's weird. There's a big calm spot. And it was a straight line. And it ran for probably 2 boat lengths, probably 50, 60 feet. 50, 60 feet of water that was not ripply. It was calm. And so, you know, have fishing the Delaware River and Hudson River and Current and Potomac, having that knowledge, dude, I know that means that there's something there, right? When there's a calm spot like that, there's something breaking the normal turbidity of the water, right? And so I remember like looking at it like, that's weird, and idling over there and idling over that and seeing just a sharp rise, a couple feet, a flat, and a sharp break. And then turning back around and realizing that I found a rock. I found like an area of boulders that created this high spot and broke the current. And you know, when you find areas like that in your mind, you know, the electronics were so rudimentary back then. So there was no forward facing, there was no side imaging. Even looking at fish, even determining whether fish was there was a hard thing. And I remember, you know, my style would be to drop a buoy. So I remember idling. I could see it on my graph. I could drop a waypoint, but I would drop a buoy, an actual marker buoy. It's like a fossil now. People don't even know what that is. And I dropped the buoy, and you know, going down current of it, because I want to fish up current. So the buoy's up current of me. And there's always this moment back then, you know, in the age of using your senses and using your gut and guesswork, right? There's always this sense of, God, is this the spot? And I remember back then, there was no drop shot. It was a tube, it was a grub, it was plastic, little blast Carolina rig. And I remember casting a tube to that marker buoy and snapping it. And when it fell, I get a bite, set the hook. And when I'm reeling it in and look down, there are 30, 40, 2 to 4 pound, 2 to 3 3/4 pound smallmouths behind it. And you're just like, oh my gosh, did this just happen? And make a long story short, you know, playing that spot for 3 days, securing a top 20, adding in just going down that Detroit River and just fishing other current breaks, right? So now in my mind, I know that current breaks are the deal, so I know what to look for. So I spent a good amount of time in the tournament. I'd start there and get limits every day, good limits. Then I could just fish free in the river. Here we go again, fishing the moment. When I was younger, I did such a good job of it, and I had a good tournament. We can go back in the stats and look, but it was a top 20 tournament, maybe 21st, 23rd, something like that, in my first pro event ever. Larry Nixon won that event from where I fished, probably 5 miles out into the lake, so near the mouth of the Detroit River. So, dude, what a great way to start your career, with a good event, knowing you were near the winning fish, knowing I was near a guy that was my hero. Larry Nixon fished just up from me and won the tournament. What a confidence booster, you know? And even though that was a good finish, even though it wasn't a win or anything like that, dude, it gave me a tremendous amount of confidence in my tournament fishing. And, you know, I look back on that, and you talk about the little moments and the little things that happen in life. And what if this happened this way? What if this didn't happen? What if things changed a little? What if I was to bomb that first tournament? I didn't find that rock, and I bombed. What would have happened?
Let's go to this week's Pro Pointer with our winner, Mike Iaconelli.
The number one bait I'm catching 90% of my largemouth on is basically a jig. It's the reason that I chose that is kind of twofold. The number one reason I chose it is because of the type of areas I'm fishing. I think it's the best presentation-wise. Fishing areas that have a lot of grass. And the way I'm fishing this jig, it gets into the pockets of the grass, it gets underneath the docks or underneath of some tire systems, or I'm fishing near some reeds, it gets into the reeds. and it comes down clean, no weeds on it, and it's more like a reaction strike. And I could also work this bait for a couple feet without getting a lot of weeds tangled on it. So I'm using a jig. The second reason I chose a jig is because I have supreme confidence in a jig. I mean, I'm a power fisherman, so anytime I get on a tournament and I get down a bank where I can throw a jig, I try to go to that bait because it's one of my strengths. So anytime I'm enter a tournament where that bait can come into effect, I try to go to it. So that's the second reason I'm using a jig.
Okay, guys, now it's time for the real dirt.
The road stories are so glorious, like good and bad. You know, you have so many. Like I'll start with the good ones. You know, the good one is this, and I don't want to make it seem all terrible driving, because there is a lot of amazing things when you're driving. So I'll give you a couple. Like, dude, when you're in a plane, you're just kind of at the mercy of somebody else, and you're way up there. You can barely even see the land, you know? Dude, at least when I'm driving, one thing I have liked about it, I am in control of my own destiny, and I like that, right? It's me driving me. I'm responsible for me. I like that. And I also like the fact that I get to see the country. I really do. Like, dude, we're in bumfuck Texas right now, in this little town, and look at this. Fisherman's Inn, Oak Ridge Marina. Like, look at that motel. It's been there for 100 years on Lake Fork. I mean, there is a beauty to seeing the country at the ground level, right? There is a beauty to that. So I'm very appreciative of some of the sights that I've seen. Dude, I got to make the drive out west 3 or 4 times. A couple of times with the family. How amazing that was, you know, doing the pit stops on the way, Cadillac Ranch, Grand Canyon, like just things that maybe in my life I would have never seen, you know, and I got to see them because of fishing and because I'm driving, you know, so got good parts, got some bad parts too, dude. I mean, like, just trying to give you a couple, you know, stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic more times than I can remember. Been in a few accidents. I've been T-boned by a chick on her cell phone. Hit the trailer so hard, it knocked 2 tires off. I look back in my rearview mirror. Dude, the tires are like 100 feet in the air. Head on, I'm looking, and I see her, and she's fading this way, slowly coming over the yellow line, and I'm like, she's gonna correct. Oh shit, she's not gonna correct. I like go right, but when I do that, I get out of the way, but the boat kind of, you know, when you do that, the boat kicks back, and dude, she plowed the trailer, totaled the trailer. We had to get it was a debacle, but it was tough to figure all that mess out. The trailer never got fixed.
Was your boat all right?
Boat was fine, dude. That's a testament to Bass Cat boats right there. That's a good commercial. Dude, the Bass Cat was fine. Trailer was totaled. So we had to figure all that out, how to get a new trailer, how to get the boat off of that one. It was a debacle. But so some small accidents, hit a deer one time, the traffic, the weather, forest fires, literally where I had to avoid the fires, to the worst snow and ice storms you'd ever imagine trying to get out of New Jersey. I remember one trying to get out of Jersey. We're trying to beat it, and Becky and I kind of don't beat it, and we're stuck in blizzard-like conditions trying to get out of it. The line was in like Virginia, and we're like just snail crawling to get out of there. You know, like everybody's pulled over, and we know we've got to get to the next tournament. So we're white-knuckled like, oh, doing 30 on 95, trying to get out of here. Stuff like that. Tornadoes. I've been through several tornadoes driving. You know, one right here at Lake Fork, dude. It's crazy, but the bridge that we crossed to go to dinner the other night, so it's pretty much the first bridge that crosses about the middle of Lake Fork. We're trying to get out of here to get to the next event. So I'm in this truck and boat. Becky's in the fifth wheel and camper. At the time we were traveling with the camper. And dude, we're same thing. We got to get to the next event. Tornado watch. Quick, let's get out of here. Button everything up. Dude, we're on that bridge, and a tornado's coming across. Dude, so it didn't hit us direct, but the winds, the hail, the green skies, some of the stuff is unimaginable. And you know, the worst of all those stories is the most boring, which is just the mega drives. And you know, for me, living in New Jersey, it's my choice. I'm Jersey for life. I'm committed. But the downfall of that is, I would say 70% of our events are in the South. And because of that, everything is a 15 to 20 plus hour drive. Most of them 18 to 20 hours. So, dude, the worst of all that, like even worse than tornadoes and forest fires, is the seat, the seat, you know? And like literally, the older I've gotten, the less risks I take. I can remember early in my career, you know, early in the 30 years, and I'm not lying to you about this, dude, I would be so high strung to not miss a minute of practice or get to the next event. Remember, back then, I was fishing a lot of events. Opens, invitationals, Redmans, federations, all these events. You know, Everstart series, Stren series for my old guys that remember. And I'm going event to event to event to event to event. And dude, I would push it. I would drive 15 to 20 hours without blinking an eye, dude. Old school Red Bullin', coffee to get me to the place. And, you know, stopping at Walmarts to sleep in the back, to plug my boat in, because I'm coming from another tournament to go to another tournament. I'm stealing electricity from Walmart. I'm sorry, Mr. Walton. Those were the things I would do when I'm young, you know. Now that I'm older, you know, 10, 12, 13 hours, dude, is about my max. And when I hit 12, 13 hours, I'm done. I'm smoked. I can't drive anymore. So drive it different, drive it safer, maybe would be a better way to say it. But the worst part of all is that ass, dude. That ass gets tired.
Okay, guys, now it's time for the real dirt.
A lot of other anglers, great anglers, historic anglers, their career trajectory was like this, you know, and stayed at the top. And mine has always been very bumpy. Almost like a old BMX park, Fasola Park in Deptford, for my Jersey guys. So it's nothing new for me. The thing that hurts and stings a little more is that, you know, this has gone on 3 seasons of subpar finishes. You know, not all terrible, just kind of in a gully. And so, you know, the interesting thing is there's 2 observations. The one is the best way that I've found in my career to work through those gullies is to fish through them. You know, you just keep fishing. And then it's very much a momentum and energy thing for me. And when the momentum swings the other way and it keeps going, then you go back up this way. And so I need to find that. The other thing I want to mention is that at some of the lowest points in my career and my life, I've had some of the biggest moments to snap me out of it. You know, and you're always hopeful. I think for me, I'm hopeful that something like that will happen. Not that I want to be in a low spot. In the past, it has not even been necessarily tournament performance. You know, the best example that I can give you is my 2002 season, which was one of my worst on record. Probably not as bad as this one's going to be, but pretty bad. And I had already qualified for the Classic in 2003, but my FLW, my Bassmaster tournaments in 2002 were horrible. A lot of bad finishes. On top of that, my personal life was the worst it's ever been. Dude, I was going through a breakup. I knew a divorce was imminent, and I knew it was going to happen. At the end of 2002, going into 2003, literally, dude, I can honestly tell you that I thought I was done with the sport. I was out. I was going to quit. I was honestly had already applied to go back to rowing to get my teaching certificate. Dude, I'm not kidding you. Like, put the application in. I was going to go back. It's called a praxis exam. Took the exam, passed the exam. So I was going to go back to rowing to get my teaching certificate. And I'm like, I'm done with this sport, man. This sport has ruined my life. I'm not doing any good. You know, I was on the point of losing some sponsors, and I was like, man, I'm done. And lo and behold, I win the 2003 Bassmaster Classic, and it changed my life like that. And not only did it change my life, but it just swung that momentum back the other way, right? And so at some of the lowest points in my life, at some of the lowest points in my competitive career, I've had these moments happen that have shifted me back into a positive momentum and a positive place. So, you know, that can happen, you know, and it can happen just like that. I got to tell you that in this tournament, you know, having a great first day and then having one of the worst days I've ever had the second day, the irony of it is that this is the place that I fished my first professional event. You got to remember too, the boats back then, 18, 19 foot boats, 150s, right? Dude, I got a little boat and I launched this little boat, and I remember how vast it was in a different way. Nooks, crannies, creeks, 2 rivers, a dam, a headwater, and like how little I covered in a couple days of looking. I've never been in here. Like, dude, I didn't even scratch the surface. My heroes as a kid, I would always cede the boat to them, right? So the way that the pro and pro draw worked is you would meet each other at the meeting. Back then there was no virtual, it wasn't your phone, you weren't looking at your meeting here. You had to go to a meeting. It was at an auditorium in a gymnasium at a high school most of the time. It smelled like dirty socks, sweaty socks. You would go to this auditorium and they would literally go over the rules, talk about the off limits in an auditorium. So imagine this, you got 150, 200 pros all in a room with their button-up shirts, patches, vests, big high foam hats, sitting high on their head like this, you know? And dude, they would literally call out the names at the meeting. So you'd have to sit there and wait till your name was called. And so you're nervous then too. And I remember being like, oh, please get a good draw, or please get someone that doesn't know what they're doing so I can go to my fish all day. Either one, right? And I remember my first draw, my first day of my first professional event I ever fished. They said, Runnymede, New Jersey, Mike Iaconelli. His partner is Springfield, Missouri, Charlie Campbell. And I was like, yes, dude, Charlie Campbell? Like the famous Charlie Campbell that fishes the spook? The topwater master? Dude, I know Charlie Campbell. I've read about him since I was 12. Like, this dude is a guru of Zara spooks, of walking baits. And I was stoked. And, you know, we met. And normally when you meet, so they call the names, and literally, dude, you go down there and you look in the crowd. You're in an auditorium. So you like literally, dude, this is so old school. You're literally like, hey, and you see each other and you like point or whatever, and you'd go and you drift off and you'd have this one-on-one conversation. Like, how nice is that? Think about that. You know, like, those days are over, bro. In today's world, people don't even date like that anymore. They meet people on the phone. Anyway, so remember, like, you know, you would meet the person, and when you got a pro-on-pro draw, I had a boat, I found my own fish. Charlie Campbell, obviously, he's my hero. I know he found his own fish. So normally, if the two anglers could not come to an agreement on whose boat, first of all, you had to agree on whose boat to use. Then you'd have to agree on whose fish you go to first. And if you couldn't agree to it, you literally would flip a coin, dude. I can't make this stuff up. When you drew another pro and there was conflict, dude, you wanted your boat and you had the perfect spot to fish all day. You had to compromise, and you had to do it face to face. You had to man up with this guy you didn't know. And remember the times too. In 1995, 98% of the pro anglers in the Bassmaster Invitationals were Southern gentlemen. They were Southern gentlemen that were 35 to 60 years old.
Charlie Campbell was probably late 50s, early 60s when I drew him. So you make that comparison, and it was even worse for me because I'm a long hair. Dude, I had long hair back then. I'm a long hair from Jersey that talked fast.
Long hair Yankee.
A long hair Yankee. But when I met Charlie Campbell, it was a different scenario because I already had made up my mind at the parameters of my first year fishing opens, and was, if I drew a dude that I knew was a good boater, that was a real pro, I was going to seed the boat instantly. I wanted to learn. So, Charlie Campbell, we're taking your boat. What did you find in the tournament? I have a really good place that I found. What did you find? You know, and you would have to have this honest conversation. And we came up, I remember, you know, he's, of course, guess what he's fishing? Spook, topwater spook. And he's fishing herring fish, shad, spawn, and herring fish, and it's an earlier bite. So it was easy. It was like, great, we're going to fish a topwater in the morning. When you're done that, and it's my half of the day, I'm going to go, I found this creek that has more stained water, and there's flooded bushes. And we're going to flip. We're going to flip a baby brush hog and a jig, and I caught some good ones flipping. And dude, it was a great first experience of the first day of ever on Lake Hartwell fishing an open. Until I started having success as a pro invitational angler, the response was always the same. It was, who the hell is this Jamoke? I was always not taken seriously. I was always looked down upon. You know, Charlie Campbell was a little different. He was more of an actual real Southern gentleman, but for the most part, dudes didn't want to even talk to me. They don't want to flip no coin with me. They didn't want to even hear what I had to say. You know, honest, I'm being honest, you know, especially when the tournament was down south. You know, if it was Virginia or south, which most of those invitationals were at the time, they didn't want to have anything to do with me. The one time the pro that I drew out with listened to me was when, this was like a year later, this was 1996. I had an invitational on Thousand Islands out of Clayton, New York. So I'm from New Jersey. That's a New York tournament. Tom Mann Jr., another hero of mine, dude. Great guy. Love him to death. Drew out with Tom Mann Jr. And he had a conversation with me where he's like, man, I didn't have a great practice. I've been catching some smallmouth out in the lake, but it's like, you know, whatever. It's like 10 pounds. He's like, what do you got? And I'm like, and I literally found him. I found him on the Canadian side, largemouth. And I'm like, dude, Tom, I'm like, it's, you know, it's great to fish with you. You're a hero since I was a little kid. I've got him, you know. And in that one, we used his boat, but we fished my fish all day. I let him have the first half of the day. I took the second half of the day in front of his boat, and we both killed him. And I had him. I actually had my first top 10 in an invitational fishing with Tom Mann Jr. So this is how I do it when I'm bed fishing with it. I put number 4s on. It comes with 6s, so I had two oversized hooks. I put a red one on the back, and I put a little, I wrap a couple strands of wire around there. So it just slows the float. It still floats, still kind of sits like this. But when you hit it, you know, I twitch it on the top. It comes down. Instead of just popping right back up, it just kind of slowly comes up. That lure is the first artificial lure I ever caught a bass on. Dude, I remember, it's crazy because I was like 10 years old, but I could close my eyes right now and remember everything. Dude, I could hear we were in the Poconos, I could hear the noise, I could smell the Poconos, like everything is so, I can see it. And dude, my grandfather had this in his box, a bait like this, a 9S. And you know, like his tackle box, dude, was the coveted box. We called my grandfather Pop. And it was this old green, I still have the box to this day, green box, hip roof, we used to call it. You'd open the brass latch, and when you opened it, the roof would open the tray, and 3 levels would come out. Dude, my pop loved that box. It was like the holy grail. He had lures in there, hooks, split shots. He had a stringer. He had the layer scale, the old spring scale. He had salmon eggs in there. Dude, I could smell the box. And he was always like, in the nicest way. He's always like, stay the fuck out of my box, never go. In the nicest way. I love my pop. But dude, I had this one morning, I woke up for everybody else. And I'm like, Pop left, he would always leave his box on the porch of this cabin we stayed at. And I'm like, and I go out there, dude, I open it up and I pick out this lure and I'm like, yeah. And dude, I remember I tied this thing on, and at the time I mainly trout fish with live bait, panfish and trout fish. So it had a snelled eagle claw hook on a snap swivel and a split shot. Took the split shot off, I took the hook off, and I'm like, I'll just put it on this snap swivel. I put it on there. Dude, I went to the end of the dock and I'm like, all right, what do you do with this thing? You know, I'm like looking at it in the water. I'm like, made a cast off the dock and it hit. And I just remember thinking, man, that was cool. And just ripples coming off of it. And I'm like, like I start reeling it and the water's real clear so I could see it. And I'm like, whoa, dude, that looks like a real fish. Holy. And I stopped reeling it. And dude, it rose back up and ripples came off again. And I'm like, this is cool. And dude, a 2.5 pounder just smokes it. Pigs. Dude, my heart. I like never caught a fish on an artificial. Fighting this thing, wasn't even a big one. Dude, I swing it up. I almost reeled it to the tip. That's how green I was at the time. I reeled it to the tip. And I was like so amazed at this fish that would hit a thing that's not real, that's not alive. And dude, when I think back on that fish and that lure, it's the single reason I fell in love with fishing. It's the only reason I'm here 40 years later, 30 years doing it professionally, is because of that bite on that lure. Dude, that's what got me hooked. So to see it all these years later, here we are, I'm 30 years into this career, 40 years later, brings back a lot of memories, and it brings back the nostalgia of why I fell in love with bass fishing in the first place, you know? There are 3 guys in this tournament, all top 10, all fishing boat to boat to boat. Like literally fishing 5 feet from each other and making a cast on a hard spot, probably the size of this little cabin. Those 3 boats sat there the whole first day. They were literally 1, 2, and 3 in the standings. Just the best group of fish in the whole lake right now, honestly. And a guy tried to come in on the second day and, you know, I found this spot too. And, you know, but like there's precedence, right? So, you know, the golden rule of that is kind of like, if you establish yourself in an area and you have a good first day and, you know, you're in the top 10, then you sort of have claimed rights to that spot, you know? That's always been the unwritten rule, and guys will always push it though, you know? And there are times you push it when you know what you're doing, and there's times when you push it and you don't, right? And listen, I'm not throwing stones because I've been guilty of both. I've been guilty of saying, oh fuck, those guys are fishing in that area. Man, I caught them there in practice. I got a waypoint. Well, I'm gonna go over there and snoop around. And, you know, I go over and investigate because honestly, I did fish it in practice, but I know that they're there and I'm sort of breaking that gray rule. And, you know, guys will either not challenge you or challenge you. But I've also been the other side too, which is, you know, like, I didn't know, you know, like, honestly, this is a spot that I caught fish on for years. And I'm struggling and I'm like, oh, let me just run over there and see if I can catch a couple. And then somebody comes and chases you out. So, you know, the famous one for me in the 30 years, because it was at the height of, you know, the era of I was the bad guy and Kevin Van Dam's the good guy. A tournament on Lake Chickamauga in Tennessee, you know, I had a great first day. I actually caught 27 pounds and the area just kind of dried up. The fish actually kind of just moved past where they were. They had stopped there and they moved past. So I was like scrambling. I was trying to catch a couple fish. And I'm like, man, let me go run over. And there's a little gravel bar. And I'm like, let me go run over and fish that gravel bar. I'd fished it years before that. And I run over there and I go on my spot for my no. I don't even have a waypoint. Like I look at the bank and I'm like, yeah, I remember. It's right in front of this pipe. And I sit down and start fishing, and like 2 football fields away is Van Dam, and he comes flying over at me with the trolling motor. You know, I'm like, dude, just ask me to leave. Like, you don't have to like intimidate me. Like, there's, you know, if he would have just came over and been like, yo, dude, do you mind? Like, I've been here for, you know, and I didn't know, you know, I've been here for 2 days. Like, do you mind if, you know, I can have this area? I'm like, cool. I would have went to the next spot. But he's trying to muscle me out. You know what I mean? Like, so that's been going on forever. But there are a lot of those unwritten rules. I do think as time goes on, you know, maybe the downfall of the sport, or maybe the downfall of society today, you know, is that a lot less and less guys are paying attention to those rules, you know.
Right.
They're pushing the boundaries.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Oh, we're tight.
Oh yeah, we're tight. I gotta get under this grass. We're tight. Yeah, we're tight. We're tight, guys. During the interview, we're tight. Oh wow, we're tight on a turtle. That's a stink pot, guys. Oh no.
That's not good.
That's not good. That's a stink pot. That sums up my week, dude. That sums up my week. That sums up the start of my tournament season. So, I freaking damaged my arm 4 days before the start of the tournament. I have 2 mediocre finishes. The cold front and mud get me. And then I just want to catch a lousy tilapia or walking catfish. Instead, I hook a stink pot. That's kind of like what we should title these 2 tournaments, stink pot, you know? Crazy, man. Crazy.
Check this out.
Oh, my Marshall from today sent a video. Yo, Chuck, thanks.
Chuck Johnson, live.
Chuck Johnson.
He got to see. I wasn't able to be in the boat filming, but Chuck Johnson was there.
Yeah, I'm going to send this to Eric. You might actually see this in the final edit. Yeah! 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 Yes! Yeah! I love you, man. Thanks for hanging with me today. Thank you. Yes, sir. I love you, man. Yeah! In my early days of trying my come up in the early 90s to late 90s, that was my come up when I was fishing professional events, grinding to get to be one of the guys at the top, right? That was my come up. I was different and strange and weird. I was from New Jersey. You know, there was all these, you know, rumblings of who the hell is this guy, you know? And dude, it was real. It was like a real breathing, living thing. It wasn't in my head. This was 97 that I fished here. And in that event on St. John's River, I ran up to Rodman. I locked it in the Rodman. And Rodman was drawn down. But different sport back then. They let us go. They didn't care. They're like, Rodman's down? Ah, fine, just go in. So Rodman was literally, once you got past the dam area and you got up the lake, it was literally just a creek. Dude, I loved it. Dude, it was Jersey fishing 101, dude. Just trout stream, current, eddies. I had a good first day, a good second day, and on the third day, I'm coming back. I got like 14 pounds, 15 pounds, good salt bag. The lock's closed, but I know the lock time, so I got like 10 minutes to fish. Dude, I can't just idle around. So I grab a jig, and I start pitching these pilings. And they're like teepee-shaped pilings, way, probably a quarter mile from the face of the lock. And dude, I pitch in there, and I was like, oh God. I catch like an 8-pounder. I'm screaming, I'm yelling. I call like, you know, I go from 14, 15 pounds to like 18, something ridiculous. And go to the lock, go lock in and end up in the top 10 for that invitational. Great finish. Flash forward to the second day of this tournament up in that little itsy bitsy creek. Mm-hmm. I get into it with Jim Bitter. Jim Bitter, dude, is an icon of bass at the time. I get into it with him about fishing an area. Not near him. He comes chasing me down. He's throwing his lure at me. Like the craziest thing. I had so many places that I just kind of went on, and that was that. But after I weigh in, I'm approached by someone from the bass staff, and, oh, you're being protested. I'm being protested for what? Oh, you fished in an off-limits area. You caught a big fish. You know, you were just outside of the lock, and that's an off-limits. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. I'm like, I've got my other angler, because invitational, pro-on-pro draws. Ask him, you know? You could ask him where I was at when I caught it. Make a long story short, dude, the guy's protest at me was Walt Reynolds, who was buddies with Jim Bitter. They already paid me. They already gave me my points. They've talked to my guy. I've showed them on the map where I caught it, and they still want me to come in. So there was one tournament left the rest of the year. I had to go in and take the polygraph before I could fish this last tournament. So I had to go out of my way, drive to Montgomery, and take this polygraph. And dude, I never will forget the feeling of being set up, walking in. The smugness, and from some of the people there, from Dewey, and from this polygraph professional. You know, yeah, I'm a little nervous, you know, I feel like I'm being set up here, you know? And go under this polygraph, just like you see in the movies, but old school. And so he's gone through the questions, this, did you catch that fish, an off limits, this and that, and did you, no, and what? No, you talk, and I'm just nervous but baffled,
Right.
Okay, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it was, and I leave, and I head to the next tournament, and I get a call that you failed the polygraph. And dude, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because you got to remember, dude, I'm working for my dream to become a pro. And, it's being the rug's being ripped out from under me, not just from these guys that don't accept me, but from the organization itself that I'm trying to make it through. And dude, I remember we talked about it already, but I remember, that so low feeling of, man, why do I want to do this? They hate me. They don't want me here. Everything's pointing for me to not, why am I continuing to do this? And I remember just the drive, after I got the word, the drive and just these thoughts. And I'm like, nah, dude, nah. I'm doing this shit.
Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli. Thank you for watching Going Ike. I hope you learned something. While you're here, stop right now. Hit that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to my channel. We have new content coming every single week. And while you're here, check out these other 2 videos. They're really, really good.